Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are tackling 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari. It feels super relevant, with everything that's been happening.
Yeah, definitely. It covers so much like AI to nationalism, even meditation.
A lot.
It is. I'm ready. You give me a ton of notes and underlined passages. So
Let's do it. So remember that whole end of history thing, right? After the Cold War? Liberal democracy won, end of story. Well, Harari's like, hold on a sec. He thinks liberalism
it is crisis.
yeah, and technology is a huge part of it.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting? He doesn't just focus on the obvious stuff like inequality.
Yeah.
He connects it to like this anxiety, this fear people have of becoming irrelevant because of automation.
Oh, yeah. It's not just about losing your job to a robot. It's
deeper.
It's like, are my skills even mattering? Are my thoughts even?
Yeah.
And then he throws in AI.
Oh, yeah.
And it gets really interesting.
And he really focuses on the fact that it's not just about computers getting faster. It's algorithms that can analyze us, predict our behavior.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Better than we know ourselves, maybe.
Right. Imagine a bank denying you a loan just because some algorithm decides you're not trustworthy.
And you can't even ask why.
You have no idea.
He uses that example
Yeah, he does.
to show how dangerous it is to give AI that much power.
Totally. And it ties into another one of his big points, the illusion of free will.
Oh, yeah.
We think we're making our own choices, but
Are we? Really? Are we? In the age of big data, everything's so predictable.
Yeah, our preferences are becoming so clear.
It's like those targeted ads that know what you want before you even...
Exactly. It makes you wonder, how much control do we actually have?
Right. Like over our own minds even.
Even just using a navigation app.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe that's affecting our decision making. We rely on these algorithms so much that we might be losing our sense of direction.
Literally and figuratively.
Okay, so technology connects us globally, but then we're also seeing this resurgence of nationalism and tribalism.
Yeah, it's like we want the safety of smaller groups.
Even though everything's so interconnected.
It's a weird tension.
Yeah, and he analyzes that through Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, which is...
Oh, interesting.
Facebook's supposed to connect the world, but then it also becomes this breeding ground for misinformation and
polarization.
Yeah.
It's a breeding ground for sure.
Makes you think, are we actually becoming more divided even though we're more connected?
Right.
And then he throws in this idea of the myth of pure cultures, which I thought was...
What is that?
He says, despite all our differences, there's really just one global civilization.
Interesting.
We share so many ideas about how to build societies, how to wage wars even. It's like we're all playing the same game, just in different...
Costumes.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has this really interesting example of how ISIS, when they would capture territory, they wouldn't dismantle the hospitals.
Oh.
It shows this underlying shared understanding of modern medicine.
Yeah. So are we becoming too homogenized? Or is that a sign of progress? That's a big question. It is a big question, and he doesn't give you an easy answer, which I appreciate.
Right.
Then his take on nationalism is also really interesting. He acknowledges it can bring people together, but also warns about the dangers, especially with global threats.
Like climate change?
Yes.
Yes.
He argues that climate change is going to hit different countries unevenly,
Obvious.
which could lead to more nationalism, more competition.
Right, for resources.
For resources, exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine millions of people displaced by rising sea levels. Are we going to welcome them, or are we going to build walls?
It's a scary thought.
It is, and it leads to another fascinating part of his analysis, religion in the 21st century.
Okay.
He suggests that its real expertise is in interpretation, not practical matters.
So it's less about what's literally true and more about the stories we tell ourselves?
Exactly. And in the modern world, religion often reinforces unique identities.
Even while embracing tech. Right, in Japan, Russia, Iran, they use traditional religions to kind of hold things together while also being at the forefront of technological
advancement.
Exactly. And then there's his perspective on terrorism, which is really interesting, especially now.
Yeah, given everything.
He argues that it's a strategy of the weak, that it aims to provoke overreactions from powerful.
Makes sense.
He actually compares the number of deaths from terrorism to things like traffic accidents or diabetes.
Wow.
He's saying our fear is way bigger than the actual threat.
Yeah, and that just plays into their hands.
Exactly.
It's scary.
It is. It makes you think, are we really getting smarter with all this information, or are we just better at fooling ourselves?
Right.
Which brings us to the knowledge illusion.
The what?
The knowledge illusion. It's this idea that we overestimate how much we understand things.
We think we know more than we do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so true.
He gives this great example of people who have really strong opinions about foreign conflicts, but they don't even know basic geography.
You're kidding.
It's like arguing about a recipe without ever having tasted the dish.
That's a great analogy.
And with so much information at our fingertips, it's easy to fall into this trap.
You just skim a headline.
Yeah, you listen to sound bites, but do we really get it?
I don't know.
I know, right?
That's scary.
It is. It makes me think of all those online debates where it's just opinions flying around.
Without any nuance.
Exactly. And this is where Harari's emphasis on self-awareness and meditation comes in. He thinks understanding our own minds is crucial for navigating this crazy century.
So it's not just about, like, chilling out.
Right. It's about equipping ourselves to think critically and not fall prey to those...
Paralysis.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's like we have to become mental ninjas.
Mental ninjas. I love it.
To survive the 21st century.
I'm ready to be a mental ninja.
Me too. It's going to be a wild ride.
Let's do it. And, building on that whole self-awareness thing, Harari gets into this idea of meditation.
Okay.
And not just like the relaxing kind, but as this tool to, like, see the world more clearly.
Like he's saying, before we can solve all the world's problems, we need to understand our own minds.
Exactly. He actually does this type of meditation called vipassana.
Oh, wow.
And he thinks it helps him see through those stories we tell ourselves, the ones that cause all the anxiety and unhappiness.
So it's not just about sitting there and chanting.
No.
It's about training your mind to be more aware of, like...
your thoughts, your emotions, all of it.
And he argues that self-awareness is, like, crucial for developing those critical thinking skills.
Oh, for sure.
Which are super important now with all this information flying around.
It's so easy to get caught in those echo chambers,
Oh, yeah, on social media especially.
Yeah, you're just constantly getting fed the same stuff.
The stuff that confirms our biases.
Exactly. And he says we got to break free of that.
Gotta break.
We got to seek out different perspectives.
Actively seek them out.
Actively seek them out. He believes education isn't just about getting more knowledge. It's about learning how to think critically and question everything.
So instead of just memorizing facts,
Yeah.
we should be learning how to analyze information, how to evaluate different
Viewpoints.
form our own
And conclusions.
conclusions. Exactly. And he says those are the skills that will help you in the 21st century, no matter what you're doing.
Oh, totally. Whether it's figuring out your career or...
Just understanding the news.
Yeah, anything.
It's like you have to become a lifelong learner.
Yes. Always adapting.
Always.
The world's changing so fast.
Yeah. The skills you learn today might be useless in a few years.
Seriously. You got to be adaptable, resilient, a fast learner.
Yeah. Which brings us to another huge question he talks about.
What's that?
What happens to meaning in a world where all our old stories are, like, crumbling?
Oh, yeah.
Nationalism, religion, even the idea of progress.
Big stuff.
Yeah, they're all being challenged.
So where do we find meaning then?
Right.
In the 21st century,
He says instead of clinging to those old stories, we have to find meaning in our own lives, our relationships, our contribution.
like, make your own meaning.
Yeah, create our own stories.
Our own narratives.
But how do you even start to do that when everything feels so uncertain?
He says that's where the self-awareness comes in.
Oh, okay.
And the critical thinking.
You have to figure out what matters to you.
Exactly. Examine your beliefs.
Yeah.
Question your assumptions.
Well,
It's a journey, not a destination.
this makes me think about how Harari talks about how humans create and believe in these fictional stories.
All the time.
Right. He even compares religion to fake news.
Oh, wow.
But the difference is like scale and duration. A story that billions believe for thousands of years, that's a religion.
And 1,000 people for a month, that's fake news.
Exactly. It's provocative.
It is.
But he's not saying religion is always bad.
Right.
He acknowledges it can be a force for good, inspiring compassion, generosity.
Yeah.
But we got to be aware of the stories we're buying into.
And how they affect us.
And how they affect our actions even.
Yeah, totally.
So how do we know if a story is a good fiction or a bad fiction?
He says we got to ask, is this story promoting hatred, division, violence?
Yeah.
Or understanding, compassion, cooperation?
Okay, that makes sense.
You know?
And this makes me think about his stuff on nationalism.
Right.
When it gets fanatical, it can be dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
He compares it to a religion that worships the nation.
Like the nation is God?
Yeah, demands total loyalty.
Blind faith.
Blind faith that can be manipulated so easily.
And that leads to conflict, oppression.
So we can't just blindly accept these stories. We have to be critical.
We have to analyze them.
Analyze them.
Think for ourselves.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but what about solutions? Does Harari offer any hope?
Oh, he does.
He does.
He doesn't sugarcoat anything, but he really wants us to take action
Okay.
and use our knowledge and our compassion.
To make things better.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He believes we can overcome these challenges, but we have to change how we think and how we act.
It's a conscious choice.
It is. And he really highlights global cooperation.
Like working together.
Working together. He says things like climate change, all the tech stuff, nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
We can't solve those alone.
As individual nations.
No.
He's saying we got to move beyond nationalism.
Think bigger.
Think bigger. But how do you get people to do that when everyone's so scared and distrustful?
He says we have to cultivate empathy,
Okay.
compassion, a willingness to see other points of view.
Be open to other perspectives.
Yes. Dialogue, education, finding common ground.
So instead of just fighting with people who disagree with us,
Yeah.
we should try to understand them.
And find ways to work together.
Work together.
He says our shared humanity is more important than all those differences.
That's powerful.
It is.
But how do we put that into practice? How do we build a better world?
He thinks it starts with each of us.
Okay.
Looking at our own beliefs, our own behaviors, making changes where we need to,
Making better choices?
choosing empathy over fear.
This makes me think about the meditation stuff again.
Yeah.
He seems to think self-awareness is key
It's like the
for
foundation.
creating real change.
He says that by understanding our minds, we become more compassionate, more mindful,
And we can make a bigger difference.
like ripples in a pond.
Oh, I like that.
You know, your inner changes can affect everyone around you.
So it's not just about personal growth. It's about using that
Make the
to
world better.
make the world better.
Exactly. Harari sees meditation as this tool for transformation,
Yeah.
and that ripples out to your relationships, your community, the whole world even.
That's hopeful.
It is, even with all the challenges.
We have the power to change things.
We do.
And it's not just about technology or politics.
It's about our hearts and minds.
Wow. This has been a lot.
A lot to think about.
This deep dive into 21 lessons has been,
Amazing.
it really has. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
It's a book that sticks with you.
It does.
It makes you question everything.
So much to process. I mean, we've gone through so many fascinating ideas from Harari's 21 lessons,
Mhm.
from, the changing role of liberalism to AI to even
Meditation.
yeah, how do we even make sense of the 21st century?
It's a lot, right? It definitely feels like we need a new way of thinking.
Totally. So before we finish this deep dive, let's sum up the main takeaways.
Okay, yeah, good idea.
What are the big things, for you, the listener, to think about?
I think one of the most powerful things Harari says is that we need global cooperation.
Big time.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
He's like, look, climate change, technology, the threat of nuclear war, individual countries can't solve these things alone.
He really thinks clinging to those national identities might,
Hold us back.
yeah, stop us from finding the solutions that work for everyone.
We're all connected, right?
Yeah, our actions have consequences way beyond our own little
Our little bubbles.
bubbles, exactly. And that brings us to another big takeaway. Critical thinking.
Yes, especially now.
When there's so much information, but is it all accurate?
We got to be able to separate truth from,
From fiction,
yeah,
question our own assumptions.
be open to other viewpoints,
All of that.
especially with social media.
Oh my gosh.
With those algorithms just feed you the same stuff over and over.
Just confirming our biases.
You get stuck in that echo chamber.
How do we break free, though, from those echo chambers?
Education,
Oh,
but not just memorizing facts.
right.
It's about learning how to think for yourself, how to analyze information, evaluate different viewpoints.
Like becoming detectives almost?
Yes. Questioning what you see, looking for evidence.
And that skill, that's going to be so important no matter what you're doing.
in your career, in your life,
Yeah.
making decisions about your health.
Yeah, your finances, everything.
It's about being a lifelong learner, adapting to the changes.
Because the world's not slowing down.
No way.
The job market's changing constantly.
Stay curious. Keep learning.
Okay, so we got to stay curious. We got to be critical thinkers. And then there's this big question of meaning.
Oh, yeah.
In a world where all the old stories are falling apart.
what's true anymore.
Right. Nationalism, religion, the idea of progress.
It's all being questioned.
So where do we find meaning then in the 21st century?
Harari says look inward.
Okay, the same.
Instead of clinging to those old stories, find meaning in your own life, your relationships, what you contribute to the world.
So make your own meaning.
Yeah, find your values, your passions, and figure out how to make a positive impact.
Even if it's a small impact.
Even small things matter.
And this whole idea of creating our own meaning, it connects back to the self-awareness and meditation stuff.
It all ties together, right?
Yeah.
Understanding your own mind can free you from so much suffering.
Oh, wow.
Let go of the negative stuff. Focus on the present.
Finding some peace.
Exactly. It's not just about relaxation.
It's about understanding yourself.
So you can live a better life.
For a meaningful life.
Yes. And, with all the challenges we're facing, you need that resilience.
Yeah, you got to be able to navigate it all.
And do it with clarity, compassion, purpose.
This deep dive into 21 lessons has been a wild ride.
It's a lot to absorb.
It is. I hope you found it thought-provoking.
Me too. I think it's one of those books that makes you ask more questions.
It definitely does.
Which is good, right? It gets you thinking.
So as you go about your day, ask yourself, what stories are shaping my reality?
Are they good stories?
Yeah. Are they serving me? And what new stories do we need to tell ourselves to create a better future, a more just future, a more compassionate future?
It's been great talking about this.
Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.